Hi folks, it's Matthew's Movie Mentions. This is week 7, and this week I've been able to watch 9 films. It's been a definite learning experience, this one for me. I have realised I think I need to make sure I'm watching a lot of films I've not seen before. I should be trying to expand my cultural experience of different films, classic films, films that intrigue me, films that I think I should see, films that other people reference that I want to have seen. So, as much as I enjoy watching a good film again and again, or on second or third times, the project should definitely be about expanding my experience of films and cinema. Now, sadly, this week it means that I've watched some real dross. It might be happenstance that I've just picked bad films, so I've seen the blurb or I've been interested in a film for whatever reason, but they've all turned out pretty bad. So I'm going to be a little bit negative this week, I'm afraid. It's going to be a lot of talking about why this was not a successful film. And I did try a good range of different things, films that are supposed to be great, films that are a part of a beloved series or have an actor or writer that I liked, but it did not work out well. I'm going to try for a more curated effort in future. I've added a number to my watch list on Amazon and Letterboxd so that I have good films that I'm interested in, or what I hope are good films that I'm interested in, more readily available. I've said before, I don't want to spend a lot of time sitting going through categories on Amazon and Netflix and so on trying to find things. But the downside of that means the films are likely to be a bit more intense, need a bit more focus, so possibly it's going to be harder for me to have them on in the background whilst I'm working or doing something else. And maybe there's a happy medium, and some point this year I will find out what that is. So, this week I have watched Absolutely Fabulous, the movie. And this was not just bad, it's bad and 20 or 25 years too late. It would have been bad had they released this when the series was popular. It's really not a good film. There are some moments of comedy. There are a couple of performances in there that are quite good, that do some funny things, but by and large, those are very sporadic. And what it is doing is, fat jokes about someone who's not actually fat, which could have run in the 90s, because you sort of play kind of make-believe, but it just doesn't wash here. And the guest appearances were too few and too poorly used to even mean too much. You know, John Hamm and Gwendolyn Christie and people I absolutely adore turning up, but not getting the best of them at all. So, a very disappointing effort. The only film that I rewatched this week was The Cable Guy. This is the only one that I'd seen before. It was discussed on the Movie Crush podcast a while ago, and whilst I didn't enjoy it when I first heard it, it was interesting to hear people who were really into it talk about it. So I thought, okay, I'll give it another chance and see if 20 years' experience has changed. And like we had last week with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and Rogue One, I don't think it's improved. I don't think my view of this film is any different. I can see a bit more about what it's doing. I have less expectation of what's coming from Jim Carrey, but not an enjoyable experience, sadly. I found a film on Netflix called Violet and Daisy, which young female assassins plus James Gandolfini in a dark comedy. It sounds like the sort of thing I'd really enjoy. It sounds right up my street, but there wasn't that much humour in this. The plot itself didn't hold together very well at all. And by and large, it was just too scattergun, trying to do several stories that didn't really hold together, and I felt I kept expecting them to be tied in a nice bow at the end, but we never quite got there. We just sort of moved on from the story. So, yeah, that was not successful, but the blurb made it sound interesting, so that's why I tried that. I watched The Rock for the podcast Pop Culturally Deprived. I expected to enjoy The Rock, but it's not a good film. It takes itself very seriously. I don't think the film gets the best from the leading actors, and it does take a very long time to get to where it should do. The podcast is out in a couple of weeks, so there's full thoughts on that. We had a really good discussion. We got into a lot of detail on it, because we've talked before, we don't like to just have a go at something we've not enjoyed. We want to try and explain why we've not enjoyed it, from a very subjective perspective, obviously, but get into that and have that understanding why it's not so successful now. The next movie is Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. So Anna Kendrick and Aubrey Plaza both go a very long way with me. I love them in pretty much anything they do, but the twist of this film lacks the charm of Wedding Crashers. It generally goes for gross or loud humour or violent humour wherever it can. There are a few moments that they're rescued by the good performances, because there are some quality actors in this, but largely they're shouted off screen. The rest of the movie does not allow them to exist, and the ensemble does not give everyone else any space. Everyone's trying to make the most of their appearance on screen rather than working with each other to develop the dynamic and the relationship that should really work. So another disappointing one, sadly. I watched a documentary, Plastic Galaxy, the story of Star Wars. So this was about Star Wars toys, and a lot of the documentary does exactly what I like from a documentary. It gives an insight into the companies that developed the toys, how the toys were created, how they started the marketing and the branding for them. It talked about some of the rarest items, some of the things that were developed and how they sold them. And it talked about what they did to promote the longevity of Star Wars as a series through a toy line. But there was just an element of it that reminded me of Trekkies. It was a bit of sort of pointing and laughing at very nerdy guys collecting toys, which it comes across as a little mean, a little cringeworthy at times almost. So that detracted from it. But an interesting documentary. So one that's probably worth seeking out if you're interested in the subject matter. There was a film on Netflix called Little Evil, which is Adam Scott dealing with a stepson who might be the devil, which sounds like a good setup. I like Adam Scott. I love him in Parks and Rec and a few other things I've seen him in. But the film didn't really do anything with that idea other than the same sort of plot points about it again and again and again. And Adam Scott himself didn't get to do much. He mostly reacted to other people doing things or telling him things, which, not interesting. Evangeline Lilly was in it, and she was excellent. She is as good as she ever is. She is a terrific actress, so she was enjoyable at least, as the devil stepson's biological mother. I also watched Baywatch, which, knowing that I've watched some really bad films this week, you might expect me to absolutely lay into. But I was really surprised by Baywatch the movie. This film knew exactly what it was doing. It knew it was doing something largely terrible. It was making fun of itself. It had characters that were generally treated better than you might expect. You still had women with the zips on their swimsuits down, running along in slow motion. But then it would call it out and be like, hey, are they running in slow motion? Yeah, that's really strange, but it always happens when they run. Things like that. The opening shots with the title and The Rock coming up out of the water with spinning dolphins behind him. Straight away, this film tells you it knows what it's doing. The last third drifts a bit. It forgets that it's a comedy and it starts dealing with just the plot, and you have to really be into the plot at that point. But other than that, it was a lot of fun. I genuinely enjoyed this film. And finally this week, I watched Hidden Figures, which absolutely rescued the week. This was a superb film. I was really interested in watching it when it first came out, and I was not let down having finally seen it. It's a well-told tale. There were things that I was really worried it was going to go in a very dark situation, and it didn't. It actually gave me something positive out of the film, where I thought it was going to go very negative and show some real hard things. I've read up a bit on the story post the film, and I'm disappointed how much they changed, how much was included to add drama to it, but that's often the way of films like this. So Hidden Figures is easily my recommendation of the week. It was terrific. Some of the performances in that are wonderful. And the fact that it gives you actually only a very small story in what's a very, very large story. So it made that small piece very dramatic, but made me more interested in the larger thing. What happened to these women? What happened to the astronauts and the craft they were working on here that's outside of just knowing what happens to the Apollo series when that launches? So, great film. Really enjoyed that. Over this next week, Black Panther is finally out, Shape of Water is finally out, so I'm hoping for a couple of trips to the cinema to go and catch them. And like I say, hoping to watch a few more quality films on Amazon. I've got things like The Green Mile and Jabberwocky in Brazil that I'm particularly looking forward to watching. So I will be checking them out, and I will speak to everyone next week.